guys, it's been a very muddy season on the trails, and I figured it would be a great time to drop off my mountain cycle for some services. What do you say?
I mean, we'd be more than happy to service your bike. It's
kind of dirty. Do you mind hosing it down a little bit so we can work on it?
I guess you guys are right. My bike is rather muddy. Perhaps I will go clean it myself at home and then bring it back to the shop. Good day. If you're a mountain biker, chances are your bike is pretty dirty pretty frequently. Well, not only will a clean bike look better, but it'll also function better in the present and in the future. I'm Mike from the Lost Co, and in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to wash your muddy mountain bike. So let's get rid of this dirty stash and go wash that dirty bike. Step 1, go for a muddy bike ride. Now let's move on to step number 2, spray down your bike. Oh, stop it, jeez! This is such a stupid idea, how did I let you talk me into this?
Mike, this was your idea.
Anyway, step 2 is to spray your bike. So grab your hose and start spraying. On your sprayer head, set the setting to the shower or a similar mode to spray over most of the bike. This way the stream of water won't be too powerful, and this is really just going to be used to get most of the large chunks of mud off the bike. Do this over the whole bike until you can't really get anything else off. Then just flip your bike around and then spray that side down as well. When you're spraying it down, make sure that you get every crevice, especially a couple of the spots that a lot of people forget about that seem to collect a whole lot of mud. And that's going to be the arches behind the fork, and then also underneath your saddle and on top of your seat posts, kind of underneath here, and then down here, right on the back of here. And don't forget to get the underside too. And now that we've got a majority of the big mud chunks off of the bike, now we are going to want to get down into the nitty gritty, the really caked on dirt and mud. So to do that, we're going to go from the shower mode to our jet mode, which is going to be a lot harder and a more precise spray. So the key to spraying your bike down with the jet mode is never use a pressure washer. The jet mode with a hose and a sprayer head is going to be plenty of power to get off all the caked mud and dirt. So what we're going to do is we're going to spray down all that stuff that's really caked on there, but you're going to want to be cautious and conscious of one thing, and that's your bearings in your frame and anything that has a seal. So when you're using the really powerful jet mode, you can spray all you want on the tires and the rims, things like that, but you don't want to spray directly at your fork seals, and you don't want to spray directly at your pivot points in your frame, because since there are bearings with seals keeping water out, then you don't want to blast water into them because it can happen, and that will prematurely wear down your bearings and seals and get water into places that it shouldn't be. Now there are a few places on your bike that are going to collect a lot of mud and grime that are going to be really hard to get out with the hose unless you spray directly at it in the jet mode, but since we want to avoid spraying down here, which is going to be my trouble spot, which is where most of the mud and grime always gets stuck in, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a little bit conscious of how I'm spraying, and I am going to use the jet mode, but not on super high, and I'm going to go pretty close, and I'm going to spray sort of at an angle so that it's not directly spraying straight at the seals and straight at the bearings. Make sure to spin your cranks over, and make sure to spin your wheels so that you can get all of the mud off of the whole tire all the way around, and then also you're going to be able to get to the underside of the hub. Well, now that we've sprayed off as much of the mud and dirt as possible, it's time for step 3, which is to wash your bike. After spraying down your bike, you'll probably think that your bike looks pretty dang clean, but after you let it dry for just a second, you'll notice that there's still a bunch of dirt all over the frame. WPL Bio Bike Wash is by far my favorite bike wash, and it removes mud like super fast, and it makes washing your bike go by very quickly. It's also super eco-friendly. Not only is it 100% biodegradable, but it's also VOC free and phosphate free as well. Bio Bike Wash is safe on all materials for any bikes, including carbon fiber. This stuff is also totally safe to be sprayed on any types of seals, anodized metals, and it's also 100% safe for your disc brakes, so you can spray this right onto your rotors and brake pads and you will not contaminate them. And since Bio Bike wash is 100% biodegradable and non-toxic. You don't have to worry about getting a bunch of gnarly chemicals all over your skin and on your bike. And also, you don't feel bad when you see this stuff trickling down and resting into the soil below and washing away into the drains. With your bike wash, just start spraying down your bike pretty much all over the place wherever it's dirty. And make sure that you spray down both sides of your bike. Now let's scrub all the mud off the bike and really put that bike wash to work. For this job, here at the shop, we prefer to use the Park Tool BCB 4.2 brush set. This kit includes one gear cleaning brush, one taper detail brush, one frame cleaning sponge with bristles, and one soft bristle soaping brush. Grab your soft bristled soaping brush, get it a little bit wet with the hose, and then you're going to just start scrubbing down the frame. Be sure to clean out your brush a couple times to remove all the dirt and mud that's stuck in the brush to clean it even better. While you're using your soaping brush, you'll probably notice that you can't really get into every single crevice, especially around the hubs and the drivetrain. So then you can grab this guy, the little tapered one, get that in between the hubs, and clean the hubs too. You can also use this tool to get the space between the hub and the rotor right here, which is a pretty hard to get spot unless you have this tool. The taper brush also works great around parts of your linkage, right here, which we couldn't get at with the other larger brush, and down here by the main pivot. This brush is actually kind of weird, but it actually works really well for doing things like the sidewalls of your tires, where mud typically gets stuck on there pretty good. It also works really nice to clean your rims and get between spokes because it's a little bit thinner than the soaping brush. Now that we've got the entire bike all washed with the Bio Bike Wash and scrubbed with the Park Tool brushes, we are going to move on to step number 4, which is to clean the drivetrain. To clean your chain and drivetrain, grab your gear clean brush, and then you're gonna get to work. Use a little bit of elbow grease and get as much grime and gunk off of your cassette and drivetrain as possible. Don't be afraid to use lots of bike wash on here because your cassette is most likely going to collect a ton of grime and dirt and mud from the trail. And while you're down here, clean off the pulleys on your derailleur as well, using pretty much the same exact method, using the gear clean brush. Make sure to get both sides of your pulleys as well. For this step, I'm going to grab the WPL Biosolvent Degreaser. Just like the Bio Bike Wash, the Biosolvent Degreaser is 100% biodegradable and non-toxic, so you don't have to feel bad about getting this stuff on your skin or on the ground. Although, unlike the Bio Bike Wash, this is technically a solvent, so you do not want to get this on your brake pads or rotors, although it is safe for all other materials, including skin. It's really easy to use, and you can either pour or spray it directly onto any of your super dirty parts. We prefer to mainly use it on drivetrain components, such as chains, chain rings, cassettes, and the pulleys on your derailleur. Now, once you spray or pour this onto your dirty parts, you're going to want to let it sit for just a couple minutes, maybe 2 to 4 minutes or so. It's going to dissolve all of the grease and gunk that is caked onto your parts, and then you will simply wipe it away or spray it off with a hose. I'm going to spray this right onto my cassette, being super careful to make sure that I don't get any overspray onto my brakes and contaminate my brake pads or rotor. And then also spray it onto the derailleur pulleys on my derailleur. Make sure that I get both sides. Next, I'm going to spray it onto the chainring and pretty much just pedal the cranks backwards and get some of that degreaser all over the chain, spraying right here on the bottom until I get one full revolution around. And after letting that sit on there for just a couple minutes, grab your gear clean brush from your Park Tool brush set and then pretty much just scrape away all the dirt and grime that is stuck on your cassette. You can also use this end to get in between all of the cogs on your cassette, which actually works extremely well, and that is just going to get all of that little caked on mud that is stuck in between all the teeth right out of there. And then to aid that, just flip it back over and use the brush side. And after getting your cassette teeth, then just start focusing on the chain and scrubbing on the chain. And then once you're done with that, then use the gear clean brush on your pulleys and get all of the dirt and grime off of those. And last but not least, just get all the gunk and junk off of your chainring. Now that your drivetrain is fully degreased and cleaned, now it's time for step number 5, and that's to rinse off your bike and dry it off. Before you start spraying your bike, keep one thing in mind. Depending on how long you let your degreaser sit on your drivetrain, the rest of the bike might have actually dried off. So one thing that I'll generally do is spray the bike down real quickly with some bike wash one more time and hit it with that soaping brush to just get everything nice and sudsy before we rinse it off. So now just set your sprayer head to that shower mode again and just rinse off your bike. Really all we're doing right now is just rinsing off all of the bike wash and the degreaser. So definitely make sure to spray down the whole bike nice and thoroughly. Make sure to spin the wheels around and the drivetrain around to make sure that you get all of the bike wash and degreaser off of everything. While you're spraying, you're going to immediately notice just how much better your bike looks after using the bike wash and how much cleaner your drivetrain looks after using the biosolvent degreaser. It works really well. Also make sure to flip your bike around to get all the stuff off the other side too. Hand drying your bike with a soft towel or rag is not necessary, but I would definitely recommend it because it will help mitigate any water spots from developing when you do let your bike air dry. Just be sure to use a nice, soft, and non-marring cloth or towel to make sure that you don't develop any scratches on your bike or any of the components. A quick tip for making the drying process go a lot faster is to just bounce your bike off the ground by letting your bike drop about a foot off the ground, and all of the droplets of water are basically just going to fall right off the bike onto the ground and make drying go way faster. All right, we've washed and dried the entire bike and degreased and cleaned the drivetrain, and honestly, everything is looking pretty good, but we can do better. We can move on to step number 6, which is polish and detail the bike. I can almost guarantee that you will never get your bike 100% clean after washing it outside. Now that the bike is completely dried and I've got it inside to take a closer look at how I did, I do notice that there is still a little bit of dirt left on certain parts of the bike that were either heavily caked on or I just simply missed those parts while washing it outside. Even though the bike is about 95% clean, I'm aiming for 100% clean. I want this thing clean, polished, sparkly. I want to impress my friends, make this thing look good, and also protect the frame from having any dirt and debris collect on the frame in the future. So the next step is always going to be polish the bike after washing it. Not only will polishing your bike make it super shiny, but it's also going to leave behind a protective coating on your frame and components, making it harder for dirt and debris to stick to. Now, not only does this mean that your bike will stay cleaner for a longer amount of time, but also the next time that you go to wash your bike, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier, requiring a lot less elbow grease and just clean a lot faster. There's 2 types of polishes that we prefer here at the shop: Pedro's Bike Lust and Maxima SC1. I prefer Pedro's Bike Lust mainly because it's a little bit thicker than the SC1, and also the bottle that it comes on when you set this to the spray mode, it's really easy to manage where you're spraying this polish. It doesn't seem to get all over, especially if you are in a small space like a small garage. This stuff is definitely a lot easier to use. However, I must admit that the SC1 is a far superior polish compared to the Bike Lust. The only thing that I don't like about this is that it does come in an aerosol can. It makes the overspray a little bit harder to control, and also if you're in a really small space, you get kind of that aerosol effect. And so that's the only thing I don't like about it, although this is definitely the far superior polish, and it's going to make everything super duper shiny and make it super slick so dirt and contaminants don't stick to it. Before you start spraying some polish, first remove your front and rear wheel. Then cover your front and rear brake calipers with a spare rag. You're not going to want to get any of the polish on your rotors or brake pads because this stuff is silicone based and it will completely contaminate your rotors and pads. So just be careful to not get any overspray on your rotors or brake pads. For this video, I'm going to use the SC1 on the frame and components, and then I'm going to use the Pedro's Bike Lust on the wheels just to show you how both of those work. So next, I'm going to take the SC1, basically spray down the entire bike, then you're going to want to leave it sit for about 1 minute and then wipe it down. Don't be afraid to get either of these polishes on any of your suspension components, as the silicone base is definitely very friendly with all your seals, so don't be freaked out about that, just don't get it on your brakes. It's also worth mentioning to probably not use this stuff on your seat because it does leave a really slick finish, and that way you're not going to be sliding off your seat and struggling to ride your bike. Make sure to spray down all the little crevices behind the tire. Now that we have the wheel out, it's easier to clean that than before, so make sure you get in there and definitely do the underside of the bike as well. Now after letting the polish sit on the bike for about a minute, it should have that coating left on there and it's ready to be wiped off. So just take a soft rag and wipe off all of the SC1 or Bike Lust, whichever one you use, and you're going to be left with a super shiny, protected finish. Be sure to do a good job wiping the polish off of the bike. If you have a bunch of the wet polish left over on the bike, then you're actually just going to attract dirt and dust, and we don't want to do that. All that we want remaining after wiping this off is the protective film. Having the wheels out of the bike makes it a lot easier to get all the dirt and junk that is stuck behind the wheel on the chainstays and seat stays. While cleaning your bike, you'll also notice some random crevices that are still pretty dirty, like here underneath my brake lever, which there's no way I was going to get to that cleaning the bike outside. So what I'll do is I'll just spray a little bit of polish right there, and then just kind of floss that area with the rag. And the same goes for any other spot of the bike that is a pretty tough to get to spot. There's going to be all sorts of those little crevices, and just take your time, do a good job cleaning everything, and everything will come out nice and shiny. So now we're going to take some polish and spray it onto a rag, and then remove the rags that were protecting the calipers from overspray, and then we're just going to clean the area that was behind the rags and even clean the caliper body. One thing to take note of is that you can clean the caliper and the brake itself. You just don't want to touch the brake pads or the rotor with the polish. So just be careful and everything will be super shiny. And now while the wheels are out, let's just do one more run over the bike. Take a little bit of polish, spray it on your rag, and then just find all those little random crevices where there's some dirt hiding that you just haven't got to yet. And this is going to be basically the final stage of the polishing procedure before we put the wheels back in. I also noticed that I missed a big spot of mud that was stuck to the backside of my derailleur pulley cage, so I'm going to take the time with the wheel out and use my biosolvent degreaser one more time, and also my gear clean brush from Park Tool, and I'm going to spray that on there, let it sit for a second, and brush it off, and then I think I'm all ready to put the wheels back on and just clean the wheels. Before I put the wheels back in, I'm just going to take the axles, spray them down with a little bit of this biosolvent degreaser, and just wipe them off. Wipe all the old grease and crud off of that through axle. Then I'll add just a dab of this WPL Absolute Bike Grease, which is WPL's biodegradable and waterproof grease. This stuff works great. Just put a little bit of that on there, and then do the same thing to the rear axle. So then grab your axles and reinstall your wheels. Also make sure that you wipe off any of the leftover grease that squeezes its way out from the axle. Now we're going to polish the tires and wheels with the Pedro's Bike Lust. So to get the tires super shiny with the polish, which is basically going to set off and really complete this entire polish job, I'm going to spray down the tires, but I'm going to do so at a downward angle so that I don't avoid getting any overspray on the brakes. I'm also going to spray it right to the rims, and you don't have to go super heavy with it, so definitely apply it sparingly, and do this on both sides. Then just let it sit for a minute. Now take the rag on your finger and then really get in between the area between the spoke nipples on the rim and clean the rim as well. And then take your fingers and pinch the rag and then wipe down all the spokes. Then spray a little bit of polish on your rag, take that on your finger and get in between the spokes to clean off and polish your hub. Make sure that you do this from the non-drive side so that you don't risk rubbing a polished rag on the rotor. Now that your bike is super shiny and ready for prom, you might be thinking that we're done. But we did spray down, degrease, and brush off the drivetrain, which means that we took off any of the lubricants that were on it. So we're gonna have to move on to step number 7. Lubricate your drivetrain. Generally, there are two types of chain loops. There's a wet chain loop and a dry chain loop. And you wanna make sure that you're using the correct type for the climate that you're riding in. Wet and dry not only refers to how the lubricant actually works, but it also refers to the conditions that you're riding in. Wet chain lube is not only good for riding in wet conditions, but it's also applied wet. So when you put it on, it actually functions by being thick and more wet on the chain. A dry chain lube, however, is going to function better in dry trail conditions. Also, it's actually going to work and be applied as a dry chain lube. Now obviously it comes out of the bottle as a wet lubricant, but after letting it sit on there for a few minutes, you're going to let the non-stick coating that's built in to the lubricant work its way onto the chain, and then you're going to wipe away all of the wet parts and only leave on that non-stick coating. The wet chain lube has what WPL refers to as their emulsify technology, which resists puddle and rainwater, but once you hit this stuff with a hose, the lube and all of the accumulated dirt and grime will disappear. The dry chain lube uses WPL's endurance formula, which is basically a PTFE-free friction-reducing formula. It's pretty wet in Bellingham right now, so I'm going to use the wet chain lube, but if you live in a dry climate, then definitely grab the dry chain lube. Lubing your chain seems like it should be a pretty dang easy job. However, we do see one common mistake. We see a lot of people lubing their chain on the outside or on the top right up here, and this is actually incorrect because that lube is not going to actually contact any of the other parts of the drivetrain, such as the chainring and the cassette. So the correct way to do it is to apply the lube down here to the inside. This way the lubricant will not only be touching the chain, but it will also be making contacts with the other pieces of your drivetrain, such as the chainring, cassette, and your derailleur pulleys. So there's going to be a small film of lubricant on all of your drivetrain. Just apply a thin layer of the lubricant to the inside of the chain, all the way around. Then immediately just wipe down the chain and remove all of the excess lubricant. With the dry chain lube, actually let this stuff sit on there for 5 minutes before wiping it off. Everything is looking and feeling pretty dang good, so you could call it quits here, or you could do the bonus step. Step 8, clean and lubricate your suspension. By using a combination of products from WPL and Maxima, we're going to lubricate the stanchions on the fork, seat post, and shock. Not only is this stuff going to get in the seal and clean out any of the dirt or grime that's stuck in the top lip of the seal, but it's also formulated to condition the seals and make the rubber softer for a longer period of time so that your seals don't break down. Now this does not mean that you do not have to service your suspension. This is not a band-aid fix to fix issues that are going on with your suspension. This is purely just to clean out the seals and also condition the seals. Then we're gonna hit it with the Maxima suspension clean and really get all this stuff off of there so that you don't attract any dirt onto your stanchions and prematurely wear down your suspension. Drip some fork boost on top of the dust wiper of your fork, and since this is non-toxic, feel free to put some on your finger to get to those hard to reach places like behind the arch of your fork and on the stanchion behind a coil spring on a coil shock. So just apply it to your rear shock and also to your dropper post. Now just hop on the bike and compress your fork, rear shock, and seat post a bunch of times. Do this for about 30 to 45 seconds to really work that fork boost down into the seals, pull any of that dirt out of there, and condition the seal to the best of its ability. When using fork boost or any other type of stanchion lube, you want to make sure that you do a really good job of cleaning this stuff off. Now if you don't, then you will be left with a thick lubricant on the outside of your suspension's stanchion. Now this is bad because a thick lubricant is going to attract dirt and dust, and therefore if you have that all over your suspension, it is going to work its way down into the seals. So that's why we like to use a product like Maxima Suspension Clean. That's what we use here for all of our suspension service here in the shop. Typically this stuff is used on the inside of suspension when we're doing rebuilds and full overhauls, although the stuff works great both internally and externally. So grab a clean, soft rag and your suspension clean. Spray that on your suspension wherever you put your stanchion lubricant and just clean it off and do a really good job of doing so and make sure that it's all off. Now just repeat this step onto your rear shock and seat post. And there we go. Now your suspension is smooth and clean. All right guys, seriously, my bike looks super amazing, and now I'm thinking back to what it used to look like.
I mean, we'd be more than happy to service your bike. It's just...
It's kind of dirty. Do you mind hosing it down a little bit so we can work on it?
But that's not the case anymore. Now it looks like this. Alright Alright guys, thank you so much for joining in on this video and washing your bike with me. I hope that everybody out there is just as satisfied as I am with how squeaky clean and shiny your bike is. To make things easy for you guys, we put links to all of the products that we used in today's video in the description below this video. That way you can head right over to our website at thelostco.com, grab any of these products and any other bike parts that you might need. And if you have questions on compatibility, pricing, or recommendations, we would be more than happy to help. Give us a holler at the shop 360-306-8827 or shoot us an email info@thelostco.com. And as always, like this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure that you subscribe to the Lost Co YouTube channel and click that little bell so that you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Also be sure to leave some comments below the video. Let me know just how squeaky clean and shiny your bike turned out using our methods and our preferred products here at the shop. Now all you've got to do is get your bike back out on the trails and get it muddy all over again. Until next time, happy trails!